All right, we've reached our rendezvous with racial destiny here on My Baby Plays the Harmonica. Um, yeah, like a turn in the early 60s, or in the 60s, from a period in which obviously all the best blues harmonica players were black toward a period in which most of the best blues harmonica players were white after a while. All right, problematic, appropriative, perhaps. I mean, being one of these people in a way, okay, although I never got famous at it or really, did it as a serious life project or something. Um, quite. I was pretty serious about it in my head. Uh, I'm going to defend the racial turn in the blues. All right. I don't think it's that hard to defend in a way. All right. Although some people got really rich and famous doing what other people hadn't gotten so rich and famous for. On the third hand, these white blues fans and blues boys and blues musicians, British or American, Chicago or wherever, were intent on honoring their sources and did so very elaborately in many ways. Okay, I think overall. Um, and also, in the case of the people we're going to discuss today, or in the next couple, they were respected by their sources too. You know. All right, so yeah, we're talking about Paul Butterfield and maybe some of the other early Chicago white harp players, young boy, fanboy, Chicago harp players. Uh, I don't know if there was white blues harp players. I guess there's these white country boys who definitely did some bluesy stuff, like Wayne Maynard or stuff like that. But uh, I was there a white blues harp player who like recorded and stuff before Musselwhite uh, uh, um, and Butterfield? I don't know. All right. And I guess, all right, I first heard the blues when or first really registered the blues when I heard the London Muddy Waters sessions in 73 or something like this. My cousin, Lizzie, played the album for me. It can't have been 73, 72, 71, 70. When did the thing come out, though? All right, anyway. Uh, now, I think for black audiences, by the mid 60s or earlier, as R&B and soul and funk arose, Motown and Memphis soul in their golden periods, the black audience for the blues evaporated. I mean, not entirely, especially in the Deep South, and especially because a lot of bluesmen kind of went in a soul direction, and these things are very compatible in a lot of ways. And if you're Bobby Bland or something, you do soul blues, and you're totally relevant and commercial specifically in the Deep South, I guess, or mid Deep South, um, throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But in terms of what's on the jukebox in a black bar in LA or um, in Chicago or in DC blues disappeared by the early 60s, I think. It was a historical artifact and perhaps also a little bit of a badge of subservience in some ways. Like it showed the bad experiences. It was, okay, but on the other hand, like beautifully transformed those experiences too and expressed them so wonderfully and intensely as well. But like, okay, say you're a young white kid. It's 1960 or it's 1970, all right? You're Paul Butterfield or you're me. I was born in 58 though, okay? you hear the blues as an ancient art. When you're a kid, like, or at least when I was a kid, I heard the blues as an ancient art, and I heard it as something that always must have existed, or always should have existed, an eternal form. When I started playing the blues and listening to blues, I didn't think to myself, I'll do this for a while, then I'll try some other stuff, or stylistically, this is interesting, among other things that are interesting. No, this is what music is, okay? This is where all the music I love comes from, all the country, all the jazz, all right, all the pop, you know? If it doesn't have blues in it, it ain't shit, okay? And I still kind of feel that way. Like, if you're doing pop music without no blues, you know, I sneer a little bit still. Uh, so we heard it differently, okay? And, it's not that surprising that the artists got, really into this. The older black artists got really into it, because if you're hearing that what they're doing and you're going like, that is eternally valid, that's the best thing that's ever happened in the world, you're going to go like, oh, thanks, man. Like, yeah, you want to play blow harp with me? There's a beautiful album cover where Fathers and Sons by the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, where, the black guy, it's Muddy, I guess, is doing God almost touching Adam, animating him from the clay, like Muddy touching Butterfield, right? And anointing a racial transformation of the blues. All right. All right, let's talk about Butterfield, the harp player, a little bit. The first big famous white harp player, I guess. Musselwhite might have been a little earlier, but anyway. Corky Siegel too. Like, did I say this about Chicago players, early Chicago players? There's a couple great documentaries on Butterfield in this period. Was it Horn from the Heart? I think is one of them. And also, there's a great documentary on just early white Chicago blues players. I'm trying to remember the title of that. Now, one thing that happens on the Horn from the Heart documentary, Bonnie Raitt. There's great talking heads in these things. They talk to Dylan about, Mike Bloomfield and stuff. But Bonnie Raitt says that, okay, Mike Bloomfield, the great guitar player, the great blues guitar player, contemporary Chicagoan of Butterfield, says that Paul Butterfield was the best harp player he ever heard. Obviously, like, it's a fairly young Bloomfield that's getting interviewed there. Bonnie Raitt says something very similar to that. Like, lots of harp players have sat in with me. Lord, that would be a dream for me. But Paul was the greatest. You know what I mean? Like, now, first of all, I want to say no. Okay, Paul Butterfield was a wonderful harp player, but Paul Butterfield is the greatest blues harp player who ever lived? No, and I would be surprised if he made any kind of claim, even in that ballpark. All right, and I'm shocked that Bloomfield thinks that, because he definitely heard Little Walter live and James Cotton and Junior Wells every night. Okay, anyway, I think those guys are better in a lot of ways. Butterfield was limited in some ways. He rarely, almost never plays third position. He rarely, almost never, hits the upper end of the harp. Okay. He doesn't play chromatic or anything. He almost never chords, hardly even. Like, it's a pretty limited palette. I guess if I'm thinking, okay, but it's original. Okay, so first of all, he's not an anthology of previously existing licks, like some players, and specifically some white players, are. Even someone like Kim Wilson, like the great master, but you can hear reprocessed Walter and Sonny Boy and stuff throughout, right? Not necessarily with Butterfield. Right? And another thing I say about him, it's almost all cross harp. It's almost all directly into the microphone, amplified harp, pretty samey in a way. But okay, so he plays original licks, roughly original licks. All right, so that's important, and it's important as a white guy, I guess, not merely derivative. And Bonnie Raitt says something like this about him too. I think, if I'm remembering, you just knew from one note that he had the soul, baby. His singing and his playing. And his look, actually. Bonnie really thought he was good looking. I'm already getting jealous. But, actually, one shouldn't be jealous of Paul Butterfield. But, that's true, man. Like, and I guess we'll see this as we go on. Like, hitting one note, like, it's so alive. I don't know, man. Like, it's so I think like and I guess the recorded outfit is somewhat of a mixed bag, and it's a very sad story as it goes on. It's sort of like a lot of these guys in a way, like a decline into addiction. I wish he had become an old man, venerable blues artist instead of disintegrating into like cocaine and heroin addiction and illness. All right, so I guess here's one thing I just wanted to delight in. Paul Butterfield was the harmonica player for Maria Moldauer's recording of I'm a Woman, which is super appropriate, like as a response to Mannish Boy and all these I'm a Man, I spell M songs that other great harp players played on. Maybe I'm a Man by Bo Diddley has Little Walter on it, even not credited. All right, but anyway, here is the harp solo, and it's kind of it's juicy and it's chordy and it's acoustic. So this is very atypical Butterfield, but this is like a wonder that I worked on when I was a kid. Like, I loved Maria Moldauer. Maria Moldauer's ex-husband, I guess, or husband and or ex, played in Paul Butterfield's band Better Days, Jeff Moldauer. All right, so here's the harp solo from the middle of I'm a Woman by Maria Moldauer. Ooh, that's really good, and it's really juicy. And it's got this rhythmic sense that's pretty typical Butterfield too. Like he's a great sort of rhythm setter. It's kind of a drummer as a harp player. Although he can mess with it too. Like very fluent player in lots of ways. Within this limited palette, right, of basically amplified cross harp. Well, also, I guess one thing to say for harp players is that Paul Butterfield played the harp upside down with the low notes on the right. You don't see that too often, but probably because he's left-handed, I guess, like a lot of guitar players. Albert King played his guitar upside down or whatever, because he's left-handed. All right. Still, I can hardly imagine it. Like, you can see that he does it if you look at film. You can see he's playing on the wrong end of the harp. But anyway, a curiosity, I suppose. The Butterfield Blues Band, with with Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop, really great. Okay. I don't love the album East West so much. and especially the title cut, which is like art rock for the blues harmonica. I don't think so really myself, but okay. But let's try this from early Paul Butterfield blues band, Screamin'. Like I say, listen to how live a single note can be on a harmonica. Wow, I just think that really typifies Butterfield's playing. You know, it's real hard, like wah, wah, real expressive too. And he will mess with the rhythm and really flow into jazz-like horn solos in a way. Is the way I hear some of this stuff. Um, Really wonderful shit. Okay, that was "Screamin'" by the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. All right. Um, well, I mean, let's talk briefly about him as a singer, just for the hell of it. Now, I mean, I guess I would say this, the same thing about Junior Wells. I said this was like, as a singer, he's also very significant and really wonderful, soulful blues singer. Um, and again, that had like sort of a racial connotation. Like, can we do that? Can white boys sing the blues? I think it's pretty hard to listen to a bunch of Butterfield and think not. Um, the the album that I would say is a real showcase for his vocals and shows that he was listening to Magic Sam and Otis Rush, these great Chicago blues singers, guitars, um, is the Butterfield Blues Band album known as the Resurrection of Pig Boy Crabshaw. All right, and he plays a little less harp on that album, quite a bit less harp, I guess. And to some extent, he de-emphasized the harp as he went along into the 80s and toward the end of his life. I don't know if he was having trouble playing. He may have been. Not at this point, though. But just to frame his vocals is so strong.
Just don't let off from work, can't get a job, have a double job. Say you can make it if you try. Oh yeah. In this generation of millionaires,
right, he does play a sort of acoustic style solo there. Strong vocal performance, man. Really connected with the tradition he grew up with in Chicago and the men he grew up with in Chicago. Now, in the late 70s, I guess I've made this clear in a way. I love the 70s Muddy Waters oeuvre, man. Some great albums and with some great harp players like, Jerry Portnoy or others, okay? But the Muddy Waters Woodstock album features Paul Butterfield on harmonica, and it's some of his strongest playing. And you could tell it's some of his most conscious playing because he wanted it to come out great. Paul Butterfield settled in Woodstock from the early 70s, I think. It was in a group of musicians up there, including the band. And the band is on the Muddy Waters Woodstock album, or bits of it. The Paul Butterfield Blues Band accompanied Bob Dylan at Newport, the Electric Revolution or whatever. All right, so I think it was sort of it got to be, in a way, a pretty bad scene for Paul Butterfield there as he declined into his addictions and stuff like this. But when he's recording with Muddy Waters, and this is 77, I think, so it's not, maybe he went farther later. It's just great. And actually, who's the band's guy that might, keyboard player? Is it Garth? Somebody he plays accordion throughout this album, which gives us a unique sound and also gives you free reed duets of accordion and harmonica. Well, let's see what we got here. Let's roll. So let's just take a harp solo from the Muddy Waters Woodstock album. This is on Why Are People Like That? Like that.
Take your love and your money. They take your sugar and your honey. They take your skinny affair. Hey, I come feel like that. They take your...
Yeah, baby. And I think that solo perfectly illustrates that as well. This idea of like hitting the single note so hard that even a single note has full expression, and I guess if I was relating him to someone, it would be James Cotton. I don't know if I said that. He does not play behind the beat. He doesn't lay back like Junior Wells or Little Walter usually did. He drives, and like I say, the liveness of the single note is kind of what sticks. But the flow of each solo is also completely coherent, right? So, I would hesitate to go all this. No, I don't really. I'm sort of inveterate top 10 maker and stuff like this. I don't think Paul Butterfield actually falls into my top 10 blues harmonica players, just outside. I'd have to really write them all down, okay? But there's stuff he does that is completely characteristic and key in the history of blues harmonica. And then there's this fathers and sons, racial transformation of the music in which he played an absolutely central role. And then him as a figure in the sort of world of hippie music and the blues elements of that. with Maria Moldau or hanging out at Woodstock or whatever it might be. And just, delighting Bonnie Raitt. A harp player cannot do better than delighting Bonnie Raitt. So that's good. Although I just want to say, Bonnie, the best harp player you ever played with? You played with Junior Wells, dude. Okay, anyway. All right, that's Paul Butterfield. And probably, I don't know if I should have done Butterfield first or Musselwhite. Charlie Musselwhite, who might have started up in Chicago even before Butterfield, and who's such a wonderful player. And is still around, man. Okay. So we'll go on to Musselwhite, and maybe Musselwhite should have been in this spot. Butterfield is the bigger name, I guess, as things happened. He became kind of a hippie rock god. Like in my hippie high school, Paul Butterfield's Better Days. We didn't play any of this thing. Like the new Walkin' Blues by Paul Butterfield's Better Days with Amos Garrett on guitar and Jeff Moldauer doing vocals and guitar and stuff. Okay, these were lovely albums, and maybe they're not the greatest albums ever, but they were central to hippie life that I was living as a teenager in the early to mid 70s. All right. That's White Boy Paul.